I'd like to remind everybody that books need to be purchased before the signing, so that you don't waste your time later. Poemsia is actually our #1 YA bestseller right now, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. That's wonderful news.
Yeah. And I want to know, because this is your second YA novel, and
Should we sit down?
Yes. This is your second novel, and you're known mostly as a poet.
Yeah.
So, how does it feel writing Poemsia compared to both the difference between writing novels and poetry, and also writing your second novel compared to the first?
Well, I think writing poetry is you're in a completely different headspace to writing a novel. It's just a lot more immersive. In terms of my first and second novel, it's almost like when I was writing Sad Girls, it's like you're learning to ride a bike and you're also riding the bike at the same time, if that makes sense. With Poemsia, I guess had a little more confidence in the medium, and I could just let go and write quite naturally. So it took far less time and less revisions. Sad Girls had quite a number of rewrites, but the journey for Poemsia was pretty smooth, and now it's gone out into the world, and I've had amazing feedback. So thank you all so much for taking it on and taking it into your hearts. Thank you.
For your fans who are more familiar with your poetry, can you describe Poemsia?
Poemsia is almost like a love letter to the modern poetry world, and I took parts of my experience and I weaved it into the story, and I every time I do a signing, or every time I interact with my beautiful readers, I always get asked, how can I be a writer like you? How can I do what you do? And I think Poemsia is a very long-winded answer to that question, if that makes sense. And that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to write it. It was mainly for all of you. It was a kind of a project that I wanted to do for that very reason.
What was your favorite scene to write?
Oh gosh, I mean, I loved all the scenes. I think their first date was pretty cute. So I really enjoyed writing that. I won't spoil it for those of you who haven't read it yet, but her love interest takes her on this date, and it's anyway, I won't spoil it. So when you read it, that was a lot of fun.
Right. Poetry, especially the poetry that's targeted towards young adults, is on the rise now. This is a good thing, but it's also criticized by some. Mm-hmm. And personally, I see pop poetry as a kind of evolution of the genre, or for better or worse, it's also a gateway for readers who might otherwise have this mental block against poetry. So what's your thought on this? And
well, I think it happens all throughout history. Emily Dickinson and Robert Frost were largely panned by the critics. So and they've become one of the most amazing authors of all time, really. Their voices are still relevant today. They were way ahead of their time. The beat poets came in the 1950s, and they also they tapped into the voice of their generation, and that's exactly what's happening with pop poetry now. And I think when something is working, I think you will always get your critics, and the more successful you are, the more critics you'll have. They're just critics. So that's why I wrote the piece about we're the poets and they're the critics. So it's about I guess just believing in that voice, because many amazing authors have done so in the past. Emily Dickinson was a lot of her work was read posthumously. She had a lot of her work edited and what have you. So it's just one of those things that I guess it happens again and again in history, and we only have to look back in history to make sense of our present.
I know you love Dickinson and Frost. So have you watched the HBO?
No, but I've actually seen the advert for it, and I got really excited. So yeah, definitely on my to watch list.
And okay, what's your favorite thing and your least favorite thing about being a writer?
My favorite thing, I guess, writing. Writing's a lot of fun. I don't think there is anything that I dislike about being a writer. I think I like it all. I like being able to work in my pajamas. That's like a big plus. I think, I don't know, I've got so much freedom and I can't really find anything to criticize about my job. I'm just so lucky.
And what would you advise any young writers here?
Well, just I think a lot about being a writer is what voices you choose to listen to. So I've got a few people in my life that I really trust. One of them being my agent Al Zuckerman, who I've worked with for a long time, and he lectured at Yale. So that's the sort of caliber of people I'd rather trust in, when it comes to critiquing my work, rather than, a bunch of loud voices on the internet who really have no idea what they're talking about, who feel they know, or who are just like parroting what others are saying, and it doesn't come from a place of authenticity. So just ignore it.
Yeah.
Keep going with your work. If you are getting critics, it's an awful thing, but at the same time, it's an indication that you're on the right path.
What are your favorite books right now?
Right now, I bought like Killing Commendador, like, when it first came out. It was a while back,
Yeah.
and I read about half of it, and then I couldn't find it because I think I took it with Sydney I live in Auckland. But I was in Sydney and I bought it there, and then I just couldn't find it when I got back to Auckland, but then I found it recently. It was in my suitcase, and I started reading it again, so I've got about 100 pages left. It's a really thick book, so I'm really enjoying that at the moment, and I'm looking forward to getting back. That's what I'm reading at the moment.
Thank you for answering my questions. I think we're going to open questions to the floor now.
Sure.
Anybody who wants to ask Lang anything?
Good morning.
Morning. My name is Alex. I have two questions. The first one is, as we progress with time, when you look back at your work, is there any particular time or place that you think that you might have rewritten some of your books in a way that you should? It's like, when we progress with time, our thoughts have changed and all that.
I always say that time is the best editor. And I think if you're a writer and time is an absolute luxury to have, especially if you're a professional writer. There's a sense that there is that you've got deadlines to meet. You're working with a publisher, so I think if most writers who could have it their way, they would probably never finish a book. They would just keep writing it and rewriting it and rewriting it, because writers are perfectionists. So absolutely, I feel that having that incubation period is a luxury, and it's one that many writers don't have, and over time you do look back, and as your technique improves and your voice develops, I would absolutely love to go back and edit all my books, because there were mistakes that I made, like any other writer, that weren't so obvious to me then that are glaringly obvious now. So yeah, absolutely.
Second question is that I've also read the books by Michael.
Yes.
And I also know that most of your books you have dedicated to Michael as well. I also find that the way how Michael writes is similar to how you write.
No, not really. I mean, people do say that, but I think it could possibly be because it's a short form thing. But Michael's a very visual writer. He writes like with a lot of like visual clarity, whereas I tend to write from a more emotional point of view, and I think that's the sort of difference with our work. I mean, he's working on a book called Zana, where he worked on it 10 years ago when we first met. I'm trying to get him to finish it, but it's on Wattpad if you guys are interested in having a look. And if you read that, and because it's more of a long form novella, then it's quite glaringly obvious how his writing style is very unique to mine. I think it's unique to anyone else's actually, and that is very rich visually. You can see, like, he can paint a scenery so that it's like you're almost there, and that's a technique that I'm still developing. I feel he's stronger than me in that respect, and whereas with me, I'm stronger in the emotional field, if that makes sense. So I think all writers, they have their nuances. So I don't believe that our work is similar at all. I think it's actually quite vastly different.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and I wanted to know, it's like, since you have started like writing down poetry, it's like, how has it changed you? It's like, if you look back into what you have written emotionally inside your poets, it's like, how have you changed or grown throughout time? It's like, how did it help you? It's like, to, for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, that's such an interesting question, because I think coincidentally my career has followed the same tangent as the rise of social media, and I feel that I am one of the first generation of authors who can have this amazing interaction with my readers. And I think a lot of generations prior, I mean, my favorite authors growing up, I could probably send a fan letter through the mail, and I might see perhaps their picture on the back cover of a book, but if you know what I mean, the interaction is there, and I feel that I don't know how it would have been otherwise, because that's the path that my career has taken, and I'm just truly thankful that I do get the interaction. And does it shape my work? Absolutely. Like I said earlier, I wrote Poemsia because of my experiences, and like all writers, we take from our external world and we put it into our work. And I definitely, Poemsia, you know, is a manifestation of that.
Just now you mentioned that you wrote mostly from an emotional point of view. For you to get the substance, where do you get the inspiration from? Is it basically from personal past experience, or from your circle?
Well, I think inspiration is a really strange thing, and I'm sure if you're a writer, or any writers here will attest to that. That inspiration, it can come from anywhere, and it can come so unexpectedly. And I think as writers, we're just natural observers, and I do feel that there should be a separation between your work and you. And even if you're writing poetry and it's a confessional nature, I think it's important to have that in your work. Thank you.
We have time for anyone to request a reading. There's one poem.
Yeah, if anyone has a favorite poem they'd like me to read, if you've got a book, you can pass up. I'll be happy to. I can't read all of those, but if you pick one, I'd be thrilled to read it. Souls. Thank you. Souls. When two souls fall in love, there is nothing else but the yearning to be close to the other, the presence that is felt, through a hand held, a voice heard, or a smile seen. Souls do not have calendars or clocks, nor do they understand the notion of time or distance. They only know it feels right to be with one another. This is a reason why you miss someone so much when they're not there, even if they are only in the very next room. Your soul only feels their absence. It doesn't realize the separation is temporary. Can I ask you something? Anything? Why is it every time we say goodnight, it feels like goodbye?